Deputy Clare Daly, 30 seconds.
Where the legislation to establish the competent authority under EU Regulation 598/14 is. I pose the question particularly in the context that at the moment Fingal County Council is advertising a Dublin Airport noise action plan and operating as the competent authority, which we know is the Minister and the Government's preference, but they haven't been given that power in law, and I'm wondering what you're going to do if we decide not to give it to them.
2 minutes.
Yes, I note the Deputy's consistent interest and I welcome it in this particular issue. As the Deputy is aware, the Government has agreed to my proposal to pursue an accelerated process in support of draft legislation to give effect to EU Regulation 598/14. Before the summer recess, I presented an outline of the proposed legislative approach and a detailed timeline for its implementation to the Joint Directors Committee on Transport, very shortly after it had been endorsed by Government. I also directed my officials to brief other members of this House on the same matter, and I understand that a number of advisers attended in place of some members. Good progress has been made during the summer. My department, in very close cooperation with the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government, has been working in accordance with the agreed timeline, which envisages the publication of a bill at the end of October and which banks on a speedy legislative process to make it an act by the end of the year. That is a challenge, but every effort is being made to make sure that it happens as planned. The complexity in the drafting of this bill should not be underestimated, given that there is a significant amount of interaction between Regulation 598, the 2002 Environmental Noise Directive, and our domestic planning and development framework. It is also important to note that the EU regulation requires full public consultation before the competent authority makes a final decision about noise-related operating measures or restrictions at the airport. And we are working to make sure that the bill will afford all stakeholders the opportunity to express their views. The bill will also provide for an independent appeals process, with a board planola to be appointed as the appeals body. As I have already said in this House, I have every intention of bringing forward a bill that strikes a balance between the rights of local residents, the DAA as the regulated entity, and the broader national interest in recognition of the crucial importance of our primary national airport. As a next step, a general scheme of the bill will be presented to and discussed in session with the Joint Directors Committee within the next few weeks in accordance with pre-legislative scrutiny arrangements. The formal bill will then be finalised during October, in advance of being presented to this House in very early November. I am more than happy to keep deputies appraised of developments as we move through the next month or so, and I very much hope that this will allow broad support for the bill when it is presented.
Deputy Daly has 1 minute.
I have obviously studied all of the documents from the Minister's briefing. I note your point here that you're confident that you're on schedule. We'll see. We'll take that up at the time. But I suppose the point you didn't answer is, what are you going to do if in your period of consultation, and if when the legislation comes before this House doesn't agree with the Government's decision to appoint Fingal County Council, which has been an incredibly controversial decision locally. And I want to quote from an exchange between yourself and Deputy Troy at the pre-legislative scrutiny, where you answered Deputy Troy by saying that some jurisdictions appointed organisations the equivalent of the IAA, but that most, you said, appointed bodies similar to Fingal County Council in other jurisdictions. Now, I would put it to you, and you listed countries: Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Hungary, Greece, Finland and France. I'd put it to you, how is the Danish Transport Authority, the Dutch Ministry for Infrastructure, the Luxembourg Ministry for Infrastructure, the Hungarian Ministry for Natural Development, the French Director of Civil Aviation and the Department of Environment and Finnish Transport Safety Agency, how are they the equivalent of Fingal County Council?
Minister, 1 minute.
Sorry, I'm not saying they're the equivalent of Fingal County Council. In answer to your question about Fingal acting now, it is preparing, certainly, for this appointment, and it is the competent authority designate. And that is obviously, you're right, in anticipation, in the hope that members of this House will approve this. Obviously, this House is sovereign, and if it doesn't approve it, that is that, and we would have to go back to the drawing board. But we are making the preparations. We are making the preparations for this because it's urgent and it's something that has to be done as soon as possible. As the Deputy would be well aware, earlier in this story there were delays which were unexpected, mostly in the Attorney General's office, which meant that we were unexpectedly had to make decisions which we didn't anticipate making in the first place. But we are now on target. Fingal is the competent authority designate. If the House decides differently, that is completely and utterly a matter for the House.
Deputy Daly's final supplementary.
You say you're making the preparations, but you're spending a lot of public money which might be wasted. If you were really making the preparations, you would have brought forward the legislation to this House as the first step prior to now. The point I was making about the other jurisdictions, and we are an outlier now, we're taking a different view than most of Europe. OK, you didn't say equivalent, you said similar. Well, Fingal County Council is not similar to any of those organisations. Fingal County Council has the DAA as its biggest ratepayer and has operated in relation to the previous planning permission. In no way could it be viewed as independent, and independence in relation to noise regulation is the key in terms of this regulation. It's supposed to be for the benefit of communities and in that sense a listening experience. So I want you to respond to my point. You've said we can overturn it, which could be a big waste of money in terms of what Fingal is doing, but why have you chosen that route when no other jurisdiction has done anything similar?
Ministers, 1 minute.
As I explained to the Joint Directors Committee in July, Fingal County Council already has responsibilities under an EU Environmental Noise Directive, which encapsulates responsibilities relating to noise caused by conurbations and major transport infrastructures, including roads, railways and airports. In addition, having regard to its planning functions, it has considerable experience and expertise in the conduct of environmental impact assessments, appropriate assessments, and in managing extensive public consultations. There are therefore synergies arising from the assignment of this additional role. On the issue of whether Fingal County Council is conflicted, I am aware that concerns have been raised around the designation of Fingal as the competent authority and whether they are independent given the rates they receive from DAA. However, when the figures are examined more closely, it's my understanding that the DAA rate of demand for 2018 is approximately 15% of the total rates levied by Fingal and represents approximately 8% of Fingal's overall budgeted income. Therefore, I do not accept the claim that Fingal is unduly beholden to DAA for its income. Furthermore, the Council will be provided with the appropriate resources to undertake the additional role.
Deputy Mary Butler.